Hey everybody, Frank Finance here. Hope you're having a wonderful day. Over 2021, Charlie Munger bought Alibaba 3 different times. Over that period, he doubled up twice. And the big question is, okay, possibly if Alibaba does drop into, I believe, the $90 or $100 range, we could see Charlie Munger go ahead and purchase or double down again when the 13F is released in April. With that being said, what do we think the stock price is going to do? Well, let's look at what has happened to the Alibaba stock price every time Charlie Munger has purchased the stock. All right, as I mentioned earlier, Alibaba was bought 3 times last year by Charlie Munger. One of the things you do need to note is the 13Fs when the disclosure happens that the Daily Journal, which is where Charlie Munger was buying Alibaba, those are reported after the fact. So sometime that purchase happened. The purchase happened sometimes in the 3 months prior. So in the April 13F, that is going to mean he bought it sometime between January through March. And back here in October, it's sometime between August, September, or July, August, and September. So just remember, it's not he actually bought on the dates where the vertical lines are marked. It's that he actually, that is when the 13F was reported. So just keep that in mind. So looking at the first purchase, he bought about 165,000 shares at $226 a share. Again, for Charlie Munger, this was on behalf of the Daily Journal. It's a very small percentage of his wealth. Just keep that in mind. Now, when this did happen, the stock price rose about 10%. It didn't sustain at that 10% for very long, and it took about 1 month before the stock started trading below where it was before the announcement that Charlie Munger had bought. And when I refer to Charlie Munger had bought, again, that is referring to the Daily Journal that he manages. Now, he didn't make any purchases that were disclosed in what would have been the July 13F for Q2. He didn't make any Alibaba purchases in Q2, but in Q3, when the October 13F was released, it was released that he basically bought 130 some odd thousand shares, and that brought his average for the total position down to $191 a share. And at that time, the stock actually rose almost 30%, 27%, and it was able to sustain that level for quite some time, a little over a month and a half, which was actually at that time was looking like it was going to provide some really good support for Alibaba. Now, in the most recent 13F, it was released that Charlie Munger had in fact doubled his position, adding an additional 300,000 shares to his existing 302, bringing his total up to 602,000 shares at an average price of $155 a share for his total position. Now, when that was announced, the stock rose about 15%. And just recently, it did drop below that, so it lasted about 3 weeks. So the Munger rally, which what I'm going to call it now, lasted about 3 weeks. Now, in the next part of this video, I want to go through each one of these scenarios and talk about exactly some of the headlines that were occurring at the time, starting with the first one. At this time, right around this April 9th date, which is when this, right after this bar is announced, this is when the $2.8 billion fine went announced against the antitrust. So there was this long antitrust probe against Alibaba. This is on April 9th that was released, and you saw the stock price jump because it was kind of a signaling at the time, and there was a lot of positive rhetoric about, okay, now the probe is behind us and we can move forward with Alibaba and we don't have to worry about further regulation. That turned out to not be the case. But this jump here, this 10% jump, cannot be solely attributed to Charlie Munger buying Alibaba or the news that he bought Alibaba. Now, I couldn't find any particular reason why the stock jumped right around October 1st or the 5th here. The only thing I did find was around the 18th, it was announced that they were going to be making their own chips. So you did see a boost there because of that. And then also on the 20th, Alibaba, there was a sighting of Jack Ma, and that was always very exciting because he had disappeared for a period of time, or he was disappearing on and off. So I think it was the first time he'd been seen in like 3 or 4 months at that time, so it was another big event. But this one I think can be led by Charlie Munger. Haven't seen any other reason, looking back, as to why we saw this huge stock price. Like I said, the chip happened back on the 18th. There was no real big news that was announced around the 5th when we saw this start to take off. All right, and for the final bump, we saw Charlie Munger buy. There's not really any news outside of maybe the start of the new year that would justify a bump in the stock price this high, other than that they're just down substantially, and their intrinsic value, in my opinion, is much higher. There's not much other reason why Alibaba would have bumped from a news perspective. So I think this one can also be attributed to Charlie Munger purchasing. All right, so in summary, we saw a 10% jump the first time Munger bought, and it went back to its original trading cost after a month. The second time, we saw it jump up to 27%, and it lasted about a month and a half. The third time, we saw it jump 15% at its max, and it lasted only 3 weeks until it went back to where it was trading before it was announced that Munger bought. So with all that being said, I think this does build a good case for if Charlie Munger does purchase more Alibaba in April when the next 13F is released. I think it could give short-term traders a good buying opportunity, at least for a short-term period. Remember, we saw Alibaba's stock price in all of these scenarios return to their original stock price within 3 weeks to a month and a half. And so there was a lot of volatility, and it didn't stay at those peaks where the max of the 10% or the 27% or the 15% was achieved. It was only there for a few days max, and then it started trading back lower at different velocities. So you do have to be, this is definitely, you would need to time it really well. You would need to understand that, based off of what we've seen, the Munger bubble, the Munger bump doesn't really last all that long, and it hasn't been a factor to get the stock price to move up in an upward trajectory or break the downtrend. So I don't believe moving forward we're going to see that happen. There's going to have to be some other catalyst, or there just can't be any more bad news coming out for Alibaba, which at this pace, it seems like there's always something. People find something to find bad about Alibaba, which is exhausting, because at this point you just don't. You're like, what can they come up with next? Well, they'll find something new. Unfortunately, Alibaba is in a terrible downtrend right now. I think, again, I will probably consider trading Alibaba on a short-term basis. If I see Charlie Munger buy it again, I may put in a large amount of cash, hold it for a few days in there, let it ride up, and then sell it. Just based off of what I see right here, I think there's definitely a lot of risk in doing that. But I do like trends, and this has been a good trend so far. So fourth time's a charm, right? If you like this type of content, please consider subscribing. I do videos on personal finance, investing, and stock analysis. Also, please hit that like button. Boom, 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 boom. Smash it. Hit it. Bang it. Do whatever you want to it. Just make sure you hit it on the screen, not with your finger. Maybe with your finger, but definitely not with your fist. Anyways, thanks so much for watching. My name is Frank Finance. Out.